The first time Lauren ever called me sweetie, I was scheduling a covert $2.4 billion acquisition disguised on the books as a yoga offsite. And no, I don't mean overpriced downward dog at a Ritz-Carlton. I mean private jets, burner phones, and code names like Project Halo. So when she sauntered into the executive suite in those red bottom knockoffs, tossed her iced coffee on my desk like I was a damn coaster, and chirped, "Yadal and fetch me a gluten-free croissant," I knew hell had clocked in early that Monday. Let me back up. My name's Karen. Yeah, I know, the memes wrote themselves. But in this building, Karen didn't mean haircut and HOA meltdowns. It meant nothing got past me. Every locked door, every NDA, every flight manifest and midnight negotiation, they all went through me. I wasn't the face of Finch Enterprises, but I was the skeleton, the spine. Skull if we're being honest. I didn't just manage calendars, I managed trust. I buried boardroom skeletons so deep even the IRS would need a divining rod to find them. Alastair Finch, my boss for 12 years, was a titanium-jawed, custom-suit kind of CEO, the sort of man who used his children as pawns and his cufflinks as power plays. But we had a rhythm. He barked, I typed. He schemed, I cleaned. I didn't mind, I had a system. Ritual, I liked being the invisible gear that made the gold clock tick. Then came Lauren. Now, I've seen a lot. I've handled affairs, embezzlements, even once helped arrange a hush-hush paternity test for a C-suite exec whose mistress thought NDAs were just boring horoscopes. But nothing prepared me for the nepotism hurricane that was Lauren Finch, newly appointed VP of Strategic Culture, Reed. Nothing, and self-declared disruptor of boomer energy. She walked in like she owned the air, had the personality of a scented candle named Gaslight, called me Han before learning my name, and don't get me wrong, I've eaten worse from actual executives. But this one, she didn't just step on toes, she polished her heels with them. On day 2, she asked if I could do something more meaningful with the color-coded board packets I'd prepped for her father's quarterly, like add glitter. When I blinked, she laughed and said, kidding, God, assistants are so literal, which is a good time to pause and say, hey, real quick before Lauren calls me quirky beige again, 97% of you watching this haven't subscribed. I know, commitment is scary, but it would mean the world to me if you clicked that button and helped me reach my first ever 10,000 subscribers. Unlike Lauren's MBA, it's actually earned. Now, where were we? Ah yes, her first board meeting. I'd spent all morning prepping her notes, only to have her accidentally spill oat milk latte all over them 5 minutes before start time. When I handed her the backup printout, because of course I had one, she snatched it, looked me up and down, and muttered, God, you assistants always over-prepare. It's kind of sad, as if being 5 steps ahead was a character flaw. What Lauren didn't know, what none of them ever seemed to realize, is that behind every just an assistant was a goddamn spy. I saw the deleted emails. I booked the secret flights. I watched executives lie to their spouses, their shareholders, even each other. And I said nothing, because that's what a good EA does. We hold the knives and we never flinch. But Lauren, she wasn't content with silence. She wanted submission. She didn't just want me ignored, she wanted me small, disposable. Something between an iCal notification and a Roomba. And slowly, methodically, she began to chip away. The first chip? A quick note to HR asking if my role could be split between 2 junior staffers post-merger to save costs. Second chip? Telling the CEO I'd be so much happier doing simpler things, like ordering her collagen smoothies and reminding her to Venmo her Pilates instructor. Third chip? Replacing my nameplate with one that read Karen. Executive support in Comic Sans. Not a joke. Each insult landed like paper cuts across 12 years of loyalty. Tiny, bloodless, and infuriating. And still, I smiled, took notes, set alarms, because revenge, like a proper acquisition, is best done in silence. Until it's not. You don't just schedule a multi-billion-dollar merger. You choreograph it like a goddamn ballet where every dancer is holding a grenade. There are no Outlook invites titled Secret Mega Deal, FYI. No Zoom links called We're Buying Our Competitor. No, the real work is layered in plausible deniability and calendar camouflage. Lunch with M. Swanson actually meant a 4-hour offsite with the CFO of the rival firm, held in the back room of a private cigar lounge, where the only thing smokier than the Monte Cristos was the ethics. Chiropractor at 2:30 was code for a call with the Department of Justice's antitrust liaison. Every appointment I logged was a Russian nesting doll of misdirection, the truth hidden under layers of deliberate banality. I gave Alastair a burner phone labeled Uncle Greg that rang only during blackout windows. I organized car pickups with fake destinations on the receipts. Hell, I even kept a separate Google Calendar disguised as his kid's soccer schedule, encrypted and air-gapped on a flash drive in my bra during key meetings. Not because I'm paranoid, because I've seen what happens when you aren't. I held the keys to a kingdom no one even knew existed. Except now there was Lauren, the royal termite. The problem with people like Lauren is they mistake visibility for power. She thought just because she stomped into meetings with a ring light and a Canva slideshow, she was doing something. That her 72-slide deck on millennial disruption narratives meant she understood the company's soul. Meanwhile, I was the one who knew the Wi-Fi passwords of every safehouse cafe we'd ever used. I knew which board members couldn't be in the same room because one slept with the other's spouse and accountant. I knew when Alistair was lying. Lauren didn't even know when he was bored. She was, however, good at being awful. It started with little things. Karen, a sweetheart and run down to the gift shop. I need a birthday card for Dad. Something funny but like smart funny. That was Monday. By Thursday it was, you didn't include oat milk in the executive refreshment bar. Are we just anti-progress now? I told myself I could take it. I'd survived worse. I'd watched executives destroy lives with a single memo and smile about it over dry martinis. I could survive Lauren. But then she found her favorite game, public humiliation. 10 minutes before a crucial board meeting, I handed her a meticulously prepared document folder, color-coded and tabbed, because unlike her, I believe data should be readable without Xanax. She took the folder, looked me dead in the eye, and oops, accidentally dumped her fresh almond milk latte all over it. Oh my God, she squealed with zero God, I'm so clumsy. Karen, do you have a backup? Please tell me that's in your little Rain Man brain somewhere. Laughter, chuckles from the room. Alistair smirked. I handed her the backup silently. I'd already printed one. Hell, I'd printed 3, but that wasn't the point. Later that day in the elevator, she looked me up and down and snorted, I love your shoes. They're like if orthopedic gave up and started designing for sad librarians. I laughed, quietly, because rage makes people sloppy and I needed to stay sharp. What she didn't know was that I had her entire access card history printed and archived. I knew when she came in, who she met, how long she was in the executive suite's panic room pretending to meditate. I knew which VPN she used to log into her burner Instagram to stalk her ex. I wasn't just an assistant. I was an archivist, a quiet curator of sins, but even curators have breaking points. I'd begun staying later than usual, not because I had more work, but because the quiet helped me breathe again. After everyone left, I'd sit at my desk, rereading my own notes, watching the blinking cursor in Alistair's calendar like it was a loaded gun. The meeting was approaching. Its entry read, Wellness Check W/D, Harlow at Haven Spa, but I knew better. It was the final sign-off with the target company's board. No cell phones, no aides, just 3 men with God complexes and a non-disclosure agreement thicker than Lauren's filters. And I was the only person on Earth who knew exactly when and where. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but the walls of my kingdom were crumbling. The air felt thinner. The carpet beneath my desk, the one I used to vacuum myself because the janitor always missed the corners, now felt like quicksand. Lauren had made a mistake. She thought she'd won. Queens don't win just by waltzing into a throne room. They win when they remember who actually built the damn castle. It started with a dress. A white, sleeveless Carolina Herrera number Lauren wore to some gala, where she posed next to a charity she couldn't spell, and a crypto bro she was definitely sleeping with. She burst into my office, yes, mine, on a Tuesday morning holding the garment like it was a wounded animal. I need this dry cleaned by 5, she said, plopping it onto my desk, directly over the folder I was prepping for Alistair's 1 p.m. strategy call with the Japanese delegation. Priority. I spilled something, probably champagne or truffle oil. God, why are rich things so greasy? I looked at her. Then I looked at the stain. Then I looked at the time. I'm working on your father's international, Karen, she interrupted with that fake syrup sweetness that makes your teeth ache. Don't be difficult. You're so good at logistics. Consider this a micro-logistic. That was the first moment something cracked in me. A hairline fracture running right through the bedrock of who I thought I was. It wasn't about the dress. It was about the fact that she knew exactly what she was doing. And worse, so did Alistair. When I brought it up to him, gently, later that afternoon, half hoping he'd smirk, shake his head, say, she's testing boundaries, he didn't even look up from his monitor. Just help her where you can. She's under pressure. This merger's going to elevate all of us, us, as if we were a collective organism moving forward, when in reality I was the cartilage grinding away between their egos. The next week, I found myself booking Lauren's lymphatic drainage appointments in between finalizing the security briefings for the closed-door phase Roman II negotiation. I literally scheduled her colon cleanse in the same time block as her father's meeting with the Department of Commerce. Then came the Amazon returns. Karen, I've marked the items that didn't vibe. You can figure out the return logistics, right? Just use my Prime account and do your admin magic. This said while she scrolled TikTok, volume up, volume way up, as a video of someone sobbing over a breakup blasted through the executive floor. Degradation was slow, a drip of acid on granite. Every day a new line crossed. She started calling me Kay like I was a menu option, asked me to pop by her apartment to drop off a phone charger, then berated me because I didn't bring the right charger. I said USB-C, not lightning, Karen, Jesus. You schedule nuclear-level meetings and can't manage a charging cable? And still, I bit my tongue. I typed the reports, I held the secrets. Because after 12 years, my loyalty wasn't to them, it was to the rhythm, the ritual. I didn't know who I was without this role, but now the role was mutating into something grotesque. One afternoon, while reorganizing the shared drive, I stumbled across a folder I hadn't seen before. post-merger admin consolidation. Inside, a single memo. Subject line, EA Resource Reallocation Plan. My name was listed next to Shared Support Pod Tier 2. That's internal HR code for the administrative equivalent of a Greyhound transfer station. Dozens of minor executives, endless calendar Tetris, no authority, and zero privacy. I sat there, staring at my own name like it was a gravestone. Alistair hadn't even told me. He hadn't warned me, hadn't said, "Hey Karen, this is coming down the pipeline." After years of absolute discretion, of picking up his mother's ashes when the funeral home botched the delivery, hand-delivering hard copies of merger memos to Qatar so he wouldn't trust FedEx, this was my reward. A demotion via spreadsheet. That night I stayed late, not to finish anything, just to sit in the silence. The overhead lights dimmed at 7. The HVAC hissed like it was apologizing. My desk, usually a zone of high-functioning chaos, looked like a museum exhibit, Assistentus Extinctus. I pulled open the bottom drawer where I kept the old company phone. The burner, the one with the encrypted SIM I'd used exactly 3 times in a decade. Just in case. And I started thinking about just in case. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was grief. Grief for the version of me who thought loyalty mattered. For the Karen who believed her discretion was a superpower, not just a convenient cloak for the rich and ungrateful. For the woman who thought her proximity to power made her immune to its cruelty. But power doesn't protect. It uses. And I was finally ready to admit I'd been used. The building was empty, save for the hum of fluorescent lights and the low whisper of the air vents exhaling through the ducts like some mechanical ghost. It was nearing midnight. I was hunched at my desk, hands a blur over the keyboard, orchestrating 1,000 moving parts for the final merger meeting, updating clearance lists, verifying car dispatch routes, cross-checking the dummy appointments with the burner phone logs. It was a symphony of shadows, and I was the lone conductor. I hadn't eaten since noon. My coffee was cold, my back ached, but there was a strange serenity in the silence until it shattered. The elevator dinged. I froze, eyes on the closed glass doors of the executive suite. Footsteps echoed, heels sharp ones. And then came the voice, wine-soaked and smug. "Well shit, if it isn't Florence Nightingale of the fucking spreadsheets." Lauren stumbled into view, high on champagne and her own imagined power, still wearing the sequined cocktail dress from the Founders and Futures Gala. Her cheeks flushed the color of cheap rosé, and her mascara had started its descent toward raccoon territory. I didn't speak. I'd learned early that silence unnerved her more than words. She leaned on the doorframe, holding a half-empty flute like a weaponized prop. "You're here, of course you're here. You live here, don't you?" She giggled, like a little office possum. I turned back to my monitor, eyes scanning the asset transfer document. One more field to verify. "You know," she slurred, swaggering in, "Dad always said you were." "What's the word?" "Unflappable, so boring you were dependable." I told him, "Dad, she's not dependable, she's just available. Like a beige vending machine. Push a button and she spits out a calendar." Still, I didn't respond. My heart thudded, but I kept typing. "You don't swat a wasp until you know where the nest is." She circled the desk like a vulture. "I get why he liked you. You made him feel like a king, all that quiet obedience. That yes, sir, right away, Sir Stepford energy. Honestly, it's kind of gross." She paused, took a sip, then grinned with venom. "I finally convinced him, you know. After the merger, you're out, or not out, you'll still be around, but not here, not with us. You'll be moved to the shared assistant pool. You'll be scheduling colonoscopies for middle managers in finance. You'll be so far down the food chain you'll need a periscope to see daylight." I felt the breath leave me, not shock, no, that had come weeks ago when I found that memo. This was the final cut. The confirmation, spoken with relish. She leaned in, close enough that I could smell the acidic sweetness of her drink and the synthetic musk of overpriced perfume. "Honestly, you should be grateful, it's more your speed. You're not a power player, you're not even a pawn, you're just an assistant, that did it." Not the insult. I'd been called worse by better. It was the certainty. The absolute belief in her own narrative, spoken like gospel from a mountaintop, built on daddy's dollars and Instagram filters. The conviction that I was nothing but a background character in her origin story. I stood up, slowly. For a flicker of a second, I thought she flinched. Maybe it was the sudden silence or the way the air in the room seemed to shift. I didn't say a word, I just looked at her, really looked at her. And then I smiled, not the practiced smile I wore in meetings, not the neutral, corporate mask that says everything's under control. This one was quieter, meaner. The kind of smile you wear when you know something they don't. Lauren blinked. "What? You're not gonna cry, are you?" I didn't answer. I turned off the monitor, gathered my notes, and slid them into my bag with the same care I'd once used to cradle a dying family member's hand. "Night, Karen," she called, already walking away. "Sleep tight, try not to dream about relevance." I watched her leave. Watched the elevator doors close behind her like the gates of a very stupid, very glittery hell. Then I sat back down, opened the private calendar, and began. Not typing, not yet, just studying, reviewing, letting the shape of the idea bloom like frost on glass. Because this wasn't grief anymore or even betrayal. This was strategy, and I had all the pieces. The final meeting, the burner phones, the time, the place, the silence protocols, the rival company's name, the aggressive CEO who'd once offered Alistair a buyout and been laughed out of the room. The man who hated being told no. I opened a new note. untitled. No revenge fantasy, no dramatic cackling, just cold, clean data. Because if I was just an assistant, then it was time they remembered what I was assisting with. I didn't cry when I got home. I didn't pour a glass of wine or slump onto the couch in some sad montage of a woman unraveling under fluorescent betrayal. I didn't scream into a throw pillow or text a friend for validation. I just locked the door, toed off my sensible shoes, and walked straight to the kitchen table, where I laid out my laptop like a surgeon prepping for a midnight autopsy. There's a particular flavor of rage that doesn't boil, it freezes, it calcifies, it sharpens into something glacial and unforgiving. That's where I was now, cold clarity, operational mode. I powered up my personal machine and synced it to the cloud mirror I'd been maintaining, quietly, ethically gray, tucked behind layers of dummy files with names like Q2 Vendor Catering. I'd started the mirror years ago, after Alastair double-booked a confidential investor dinner and blamed me for his oversight. Back then, it was a safeguard. Tonight, it became a weapon. I opened his calendar. There it was, the final convergence, logged under physical therapy L5S1 nerve consult. Cute. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at 8:30 a.m., a private estate disguised as a wellness retreat north of Greenwich. 3 executives from the other firm, Alastair and Lauren. No assistants, no devices, no paper trail. But here's the thing about private estates, they're vulnerable. Less cameras, fewer layers of bureaucracy, more plausible deniability if something or someone interferes. I flipped tabs and pulled up the files I wasn't supposed to have. Security protocol memo, check. Vendor manifest for the catering team, check. Chauffeur pickup list and vehicle IDs, check. Every thread, every needle, every stitch in the fabric of this deal, and I held them all like an old tailor eyeing the seams of a burial suit. Then I turned to the other side. Torrin and Pike consolidated. If Finch Enterprises was old money in a Navy suit, Torrin and Pike was new blood in a butcher's apron. They didn't negotiate. They hunted. They'd made a name for themselves swallowing competitors whole and selling off the bones for profit. They once derailed a $900 million acquisition with a single well-timed leak, and an unexpected press conference held outside a courthouse. Their target CEO was coincidentally exiting in handcuffs. I knew people there. Not directly, but through professional osmosis. You don't spend a decade at the edge of power without absorbing names and connections like mold spores in drywall. And I knew one thing for certain. If they had even a whiff of where and when this merger was finalizing, they wouldn't just disrupt it. They'd dismember it. I pulled out an old flash drive, small, nondescript, shaped like a novelty lipstick. The kind no one checks twice. On it, I began constructing the payload, a brief, precise message with the exact date, time, coordinates, and participant list of the final meeting. No excess, no signature, just enough to act on. But I wouldn't send it yet. No, that would be reckless. I needed an anonymous route, a coffee shop, public Wi-Fi, a browser routed through 3 continents. I'd send it through a burn account I'd used once, tethered to a burner phone bought with cash in a corner bodega where the clerk didn't care if I was buying a lighter, a Kit Kat, or the apocalypse. This wasn't revenge. It was justice, executed in Excel rows and metadata. I opened a clean document and began tracking my own plan with the same precision I once used to coordinate Alastair's G7 prep schedule. Time blocks, checklists, dependencies, contingencies. There was a grim poetry in it, like carving your own epitaph with the same knife someone handed you to slice their birthday cake. At some point, the clock struck 3 a.m. My hands were steady. My breath was even. Only sound was the low hum of my refrigerator and the soft click of my keys. It felt holy, almost like ritual cleansing. Every keystroke a purge, every line item a reclamation. They'd called me just an assistant. Fine, let them choke on the weight of that mistake. By dawn, the plan was airtight. I closed my laptop, looked around my apartment. Nothing had changed, but everything had. My resignation email was exactly 67 words. No flourish. No heartfelt farewell. No passive-aggressive parting jabs disguised as gratitude. Just a timestamp, a transition notice, and the assurance that I'd wrap all my duties with full professionalism. I even offered to create a transition guide, bullet-pointed, color-coded, idiot-proof. The kind of farewell that reads like dry toast, safe, bland, digestible. Alastair replied with a 2-word understood. Thanks. Lauren didn't reply at all. Perfect. I'd spent 12 years being indispensable. Now I had 14 days to make myself invisible. The first week was cleanup, not emotional, operational. I began purging files, but not the way amateurs do. I didn't drag and drop into the recycle bin like some HR intern panicking after a bad tweet. I curated. I scrubbed metadata, stripped revision histories, salted timestamps. Anything I wanted to keep disappeared into nested archives, camouflaged with labels like old printer driver reference and Q1 cleaning vendor contacts. I backed up what mattered to a private encrypted drive. Nothing damning, just insurance. A map of my own footprint. The evidence that I had been there and that without me, things fell apart. Lauren paraded past my desk every other day, tossing me busy work with the smug air of a kid torturing a substitute teacher. Could you scan this for me? I think the copier has anxiety. Karen, make sure my father doesn't forget his enzyme supplements before Thursday's flight. Karen, how do I mark something as important in Outlook again? Lol, I smiled, nodded, took notes. But beneath the surface, I was planting mines. The dead man's switch was elegant in its simplicity. A draft email written in plain text containing the exact date, time, and location of the final merger meeting, dressed not to Torin and Pike's official contact. No, too obvious, but to a secondary email buried in an old online procurement record, once listed as their press inquiry line. Because real power doesn't respond to official channels, it watches the shadows. The message contained no sender name, no return address, no personal flourishes, just data. Sterile, clinical, undeniable. It was configured to send from a temporary Proton Mail account, registered on a public library terminal using a rotating VPN, disguised through an Icelandic node, and linked to a burner phone I'd activated with a prepaid Visa and a forged billing address. If I didn't cancel the scheduled send by exactly 9 a.m. on my final Friday, the email would be released automatically via a task automation script disguised in my Dropbox as a recipe tracker. The coffee shop was already chosen. Low foot traffic, open network, no security cameras facing inward. I'd even tested the signal latency. I'd set it all up the way I used to set up blackout prep for a G8 sideline, quiet, efficient, surgical. Each night after work, I'd go home and rehearse checklists, time windows, redundancies, not because I was nervous, because this had to work. There were no second acts, no redos. If I was going to walk away from the wreckage, I had to make sure the right fuse was lit before I turned my back. Alistair, meanwhile, looked increasingly relaxed. He joked more during meetings, smiled more during calls. I could almost see the tension falling off his shoulders as the merger neared. He'd begun referring to the final signing as the coronation. Lauren, on the other hand, was vibrating with anticipation. She told a group of junior execs in the break room that post-merger, she'd be taking over culture and optics for both firms. Said it with that same breathless certainty she used to describe her favorite kombucha strain. I watched her through the reflection in the microwave door, stirring almond creamer into her coffee with a plastic spoon like a scepter. She didn't notice I was watching. They never do. By the start of my second week, I'd begun staging the exit, downloaded the official offboarding checklist, scheduled my final HR debrief, cleared out my drawers gradually, one post-it at a time so the desk never looked bare, replaced my framed photos with stock images from the printer test folder, even swapped my signature pen for a cheap ballpoint so no one could say I took anything. And every time I clicked complete on one of the offboarding items, a little thrill shot through me. Not joy, not even satisfaction, just the cold buzz of control. For once, I was the one making the appointments. I was the one planning the meeting that mattered. I was the one holding the detonator. And they had no idea the countdown had already begun. If you ever want to terrify a narcissist, try being perfectly compliant. Not fawning, not warm, just exact. That's what I became in my final 2 weeks exact. I was the human embodiment of a receipt, not a hair out of place, not a breath wasted. Every task executed with eerie precision, every calendar update timestamped to the second, every meeting request sent with its subject line and title case and no emojis. Alistair noticed first. He didn't say anything outright, but I caught the way his eyes lingered on me during our daily briefings. As if searching for something, warmth, deference, the faint whiff of awe he'd grown used to over a dozen years of silent devotion. But I gave him nothing. He'd say, "You confirm the logistics for Friday's call with Munich?" And I'd reply, "Already confirmed. Agenda attached. Backup copy printed and filed in your office. Nothing more. No, of course, Alistair. No, would you like me to prep a quick summary? I was a service, not a servant." And he hated it. Lauren, meanwhile, was riding high. I watched her strut through the halls like she'd already been anointed. A blonde, overconfident Joan of Arc minus the purpose, conviction, or fireproof wardrobe. Every morning she greeted me with a cheery, condescending chirp, "Good morning, Karen," like she was feeding pellets to a trained dolphin. I replied in kind, deadpan, morning, no smile, no emotion, just enough to be non-insubordinate. She didn't know what to do with that. She started trailing off mid-sentence around me. Her confidence worked best when mirrored by awe. I gave her a pane of frosted glass instead. One afternoon, I overheard her holding court by the espresso machine. "Oh, post-merger, it's going to be crazy. I'll have dual VPs reporting into me from both orgs. I'm basically going to be like the culture czar. Like setting the tone, right? People need energy at the top, not just logistics." She said it while staring directly at me, voice pitched like a sitcom mean girl delivering a punchline. I didn't flinch. Instead, I nodded once slowly and said, "Sounds like a lot of responsibility. Hope they give you a good assistant." She blinked, blinked again, laughed, unsure if it was a compliment or an insult. It was neither. It was bait. She didn't take it. Instead, she doubled down. The arrogance swelled as the merger day drew closer. She ordered personalized pens that said Lauren Finch, SVP Culture Strategy, and passed them out like party favors. Sent a company-wide email asking everyone to submit their 3 words for post-merger identity, as if this was a corporate rebranding brainstorm and not a hostile realignment of power. Meanwhile, I continued my routine with icy discipline. I logged everything, filed everything, said nothing. It was surgical. I would sit in meetings and take notes that I never shared unless directly requested. I corrected mistakes silently, never acknowledging the errors. If someone thanked me, I said noted. If someone complained, I redirected them to the department policy. I was technically flawless, emotionally absent. By day 9, even the IT guy asked if I was feeling okay. "You're really locked in this week," he said, handing me a monitor adapter I hadn't even requested aloud. "Just tying loose ends," I replied. The final Wednesday, Lauren called me into her office. Her desk looked like a Pinterest board had vomited over a lean-in article, succulent plants, pastel sticky notes, motivational quotes in curly fonts. She sat in her chair like a cat trying to look presidential. "So Karen," she said, tapping her pen against a reusable water bottle with her initials etched in gold, "I just wanted to say thanks." I raised an eyebrow. For what? For being so, graceful about all this. I mean, I know change is hard, and transitions can feel threatening, but you've handled it like a total champ. She smiled the way influencers do when trying to look humble after being gifted a BMW. "Glad I met expectations," I said. She waved a hand, more than met. "Honestly, it's like you're finally where you belong, right? Like letting go of all the unnecessary pressure." I nodded, just once. A silent agreement. She thought she'd buried me. I was politely exiting stage left while she took the spotlight. What she didn't know was that the spotlight she craved was already wired to explode. That night I walked home in the rain. Didn't open an umbrella, didn't dodge the puddles. The water was cold, clean, perfect. I was almost ready. Friday came like a whisper. No fanfare, no awkward cupcakes. Just the soft shuffle of routine and the faint tension of everyone pretending they hadn't already moved on. My inbox was already quieter. My desk, a model of minimalism. The nameplate had been removed. The framed print of RBG that once sat beside my monitor now lived in a thrift store box in my hall closet. I arrived at 7:58 a.m., one last time. At 8 o'clock sharp, I submitted the transition report. At 8:03, I handed over my credentials to HR, a man named Derek, who shook my hand like I was a plumber he'd called for a leak that already fixed itself. "You really kept this place together," he mumbled, eyes already scanning his next Outlook ping. I nodded. It was my job. By 9:12, I had completed the final checklist: email autoresponse set, calendar access revoked, password submitted, badge surrendered, chair tucked in. Lauren hadn't even shown up yet. I passed by her office on my way out. Door was cracked just enough for me to see the mess she'd left behind: half-drunk smoothie sweating on a coaster, shoes kicked off under the desk, sticky notes littered across a branded vision board that read, "Be bold, be brilliant, be her." I didn't knock, didn't say goodbye, didn't need to. The elevator dinged like the curtain closing on a one-woman play no one had stayed to applaud. I stepped in and faced forward, hands still, pulse calm. My spine straight as scaffolding. By 9:47, I was walking into the coffee shop. Small, indie, the kind with exposed brick and reclaimed wood tables that gave off the vibe of curated sincerity. I ordered a plain black coffee. No milk, no sugar, no room for interpretation. I sat in the corner facing the window, opened the laptop, logged into the Proton Mail account. There it was, subject, inquiry to, press at Torren Pike Net Body, 8:30 a.m. Thursday Haven Estate, Route 41 Private Access Road, Gate Code 9927 Participants, Finch L. Finch, Durant, HSU, Chamberlain. Confidential transaction finalization, asset consolidation. No intro, no flourish, no signature, just coordinates, just fact. Just a scalpel dressed as an email. I hovered my finger over the send button, took a breath, felt the quiet settle over me like a blanket fresh from the freezer. Then, click. There was no dramatic music, no surge of adrenaline, just the soft chime of a successful send and the hum of the espresso machine foaming milk behind me. That was it. It was out of my hands now. The message was gone, traveling through fiber, across firewalls, bouncing off satellites, whispering secrets into the ear of a beast that devoured billion-dollar deals for breakfast. I sipped my coffee. It was bitter. Perfect. Outside, people moved like nothing was about to happen. Joggers in overpriced lycra, lawyers gesturing at midair Bluetooth ghosts, a mother lifting her toddler up to point at pigeons on the awning across the street. No one looked at me. No one knew, and that was the beauty of it. The fuse had been lit, silent and unseen, burning its way toward a boardroom filled with backpats and blind spots. They would walk in next Thursday expecting champagne. They'd leave choking on smoke. I took one last sip, closed the laptop, and stood. No need to look back. Some exits deserve no footsteps. I was alphabetizing medical records when the first headline popped up on my phone. Torren and Pike strikes again. Hostile bid blows up secret merger. I tapped it out of curiosity, expecting another industry puff piece. But then I saw it. 8:30 a.m. ambush offered derails Finch Enterprises deal. Sources say rival company acted on precise, non-public timing. I blinked. Then I scrolled. There it was, in perfect journalistic chaos. Mere hours before a planned but unannounced finalization meeting, Torrin and Pike executed a surprise press conference, issuing a public acquisition offer at 17% above the rumored valuation. The move shocked the markets and caught Finch executives flat-footed, causing immediate investor panic. Finch's stock plummeted 22% in a single trading day. I put my phone down. Then I picked it up again. SEC launches investigation into merger leak. Multiple sources within Finch Enterprises suggest that internal protocols were breached. One executive, speaking on condition of anonymity, cited VP Lauren Finch's repeated carelessness with secure information as a possible vector. I let out a slow breath, then let it settle deep in my chest. It wasn't joy. It wasn't even triumph. It was release. Like unhooking a bra after a 10-hour shift and letting the weight fall. The chaos had begun to bloom. I could picture it, the polished estate filled with champagne flutes and smug grins turning into a war room as the headlines hit. Phones exploding, lawyers scrambling, investors screaming, and Lauren, panicked, confused, mascara running, trying to understand how the deal she'd tied her future to vanished like smoke in a sunbeam. They would search for the mole. They'd run audits, drag logs, review every calendar invite and comms channel. But the tip came from nowhere. No fingerprints, no trace. The file metadata scrubbed cleaner than Alastair's conscience. And Lauren, well, another article hit a few days later. Finch VP on leave amid investigation. Internal inquiry ongoing. The article was dressed in HR platitudes, but the subtext was screaming. She'd been suspended, quietly removed from press releases. Her personal rebranding campaign vanished. Her LinkedIn went private. Then came the whispers, leaks from close sources painting a picture of a careless heiress who never took compliance seriously. Apparently, she once forwarded a confidential earnings memo to her personal Gmail so she could read it in the bath. Perfect. Alastair, for his part, tried to recover, issued a statement about regrettable circumstances and unauthorized disclosures, but it was too late. Torrin and Pike had gotten what they wanted, the upper hand. By the end of the quarter, the headlines read, Torrin and Pike completes hostile takeover of Finch Enterprises. Leadership shakeup expected. I read that one twice, just to savor it. I could almost hear Alastair's voice in my head, clipped, disbelieving, furious, not because someone had beat him, but because it had happened under his nose. But he'd taught me well, and I'd listened. Silently, every day. I took another sip of my lukewarm coffee. The kind that comes in styrofoam cups with your name spelled wrong. My new job was quiet. No executive drama, no burner phones, no gilded calendars. I worked 9 to 5, no nights, no weekends, just clean tasks and clean exits. I wasn't important here, but I was peaceful, and peaceful wins. Across the street, a digital billboard flashed stock news. The Finch logo dissolved into Torrin and Pike's Crimson Hawk. I smiled, small, private, like someone remembering a long-forgotten name and finally forgiving themselves for it. Just an assistant, she'd said, and that, right there, that was the last lie they ever told about me. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.